because I think many scientists like me would say the frontier doesn't involve people. The frontier that NASA is doing in space, the real science that NASA doesn't involve 100-pound bags of water.
I didn't say science. I talked about
No, I want to. Okay,
there's a distinction here. Yeah. If you only want to do science in space, yeah, you would never send humans.
You agree?
Would send robots. Even the geologist who would love to go to Mars with a hammer would just love it. If you gave the geologist the option, I can send you to one spot, or I can send 100
spacecraft,
100 rovers to 100 different spots that you can pick. They're picking the 100 rovers.
No, actually, that's not true. I'm in the Department of Geology, among other things, and many of my colleagues there disagree and say they think a geologist could do in a little while what rovers could do. I happen to disagree. I think
no. Did you tell them 100 rovers
in
100 different spots?
I did. You know what? I told them.
Okay.
I told them the real number, which is probably 1,000 different rovers, because you can send. Let me finish for a second, Neil. You can send, as I often say, you can send a rover to Mars for the price that it takes to make a movie about sending Bruce Willis to Mars.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But
if you told the geologists it was a one-way trip,
which is what I've argued
but they
for.
still want to be going.
They still want to go.
Yeah, then they're just crazy. I mean, why are you even talking to those geologists?
So you guys, just if I may speak briefly about the Planetary Society, we are fighting the good fight to restore funding for planetary exploration. We're trying to get $1.5 billion a year, so we need $300 million for planetary science, and it's being threatened. So fiscal year 14 is coming up for NASA. If you got nothing else to do, please check out planetary.org and consider supporting this, because our claim is science is what NASA does best, and planetary science is the best of that. And so we really would like you all to consider supporting it. It is such a good value. It's such an amazing value, so consider it. And by the way, it's been estimated that what the rover does, built by our very best rover engineers, driven by our very best rover scientists, rover drivers, who are influenced by our very best scientists, what that does in a week, a human geologist can do in about a minute.
Yeah, but
I agree, but the human geologist,
there's the cost.
It's not going to run to 100 different places on the planet.
in fact, actually, the human geologist, I think, most often is not going to make it alive to the planet.
Well, I mean, so on and so on. But this is where you see it's instead of 10,000 to 1, it's got to be like 1 billion to 1. So we'll get there. The longest journey starts with but a single step.
No, but the other thing I want to, let's stay on this topic for a little longer, because I maintain the reason people are interested in humans traveling in space is because they can die. That's what makes it interesting, and you want to see if they're going to die.
But NASCAR.
What?
I thought that was NASCAR that you're talking about.
But I find. But let me ask you a question. I find it. Okay, I'll ask you this question. When I see a picture from the rover, I'm more excited about it coming from the rover than if it came from an astronaut taking the picture, because the astronaut's using a camera, but the rover is it's part of the rover.
Let me tell you why that's probably not true, even though you think it is.
Okay.
Most people don't know that there were robots as well as rovers on the moon while we were first going to the moon. But you didn't know anything about those because the media focused on the astronauts. And it's the astronauts through which we gain vicarious access to space, because they have mouths, they have brains, they have a childhood memory, they have school teachers that can talk about those astronauts. And I've yet to see a ticker tape parade for a robot. So I submit to you that if at the same time the Curiosity rover landed, if at that same time a human astronaut landed on Mars, you would have known nothing about the Curiosity rover.
Yeah, but
it would have been relegated to page 30, and the front page headlines would have been humans put footprints on Mars. And it's that force which will bring less science than the robot that has a power of influence on our culture that inspires an entire generation to want to do the same thing. My generation My generation, when you ask my fellow scientists, should we send humans into space? No, that's too expensive. Send robots. Yet I said, why? How did you get interested in space? Oh, because of the Apollo program. And I slap them. I'm saying, what are you?
No, that's it. No, there would.
On the other hand, if you remember, if Apollo 13 hadn't been the dramatic failure it was, they would have canceled the rest of the Apollo. They canceled 3 of the last
Couldn't end
missions.
on that
There
note.
were 3 Apollo. There are 3 Saturn V rockets lying on the ground around space, around the country, because it was so interesting that they abolished the last 3.
No, that's delusional, and I'll tell you why.
It's not incorrect.
That's the fact.
No.
You can argue with the facts.
Watch me.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry. Everybody mentioned their book. It's time for me to mention my latest book. It's
I
called
don't think anyone mentioned their book, actually.
My most recent book is titled Space Chronicles, but that wasn't the original title. The original title was Failure to Launch:
But
The
editor
Dreams
wouldn't
and Delusions of Space Enthusiasts. And the publisher says, that's too depressing. You can't have the word failure in your title. But that's what it's about. What you just said is a complete delusion. It presumes that we went to the moon for science. It presumes that we went to the moon to explore it. But that's not why we went to the moon. We went to the
Brother
moon.
Neil, no, it is not. No, it is not.
We went to the moon because we were at war. Sputnik was not just some orbiting spacecraft. It was a hollowed out intercontinental ballistic missile where they took out the warhead and put in a radio transmitter. The military knew this. That's what founded NASA. NASA's budget for science it averaged over all these years about 25%. The rest has been for geopolitical purposes. All right? So it's the I don't want to die driver in this world. That's why we spent all this money. And so the moment we learn Russia's not going to the moon and it's certainly not going to Mars, we canceled the program. It had nothing to do with public interest.
Okay, now let me. It is a. Let me try.
I got to pull back.
Yeah, you got to come in. But it is. Let me try and bridge that gap a little bit.
I'm going to be silent.
No, you're not. I think it's really important to point out that this is a political issue. And in fact, me and Buzz Aldrin together testified before the House Science Committee on Space Exploration. And when I said that humans don't do science in space, I didn't argue, in fact, even before the committee, that we shouldn't send humans into space. We should just say honestly why we're doing it. We're doing it for adventure. That's why we're doing it.
No, but that's not what funded it.
Hold on.
No, that's not true.
See, you said you wouldn't talk.
I did say.
Okay.
You can say that.
No,
but
hold on.
There's no there. Okay? No. Just look at the history of everybody doing big projects, and it's never driven by exploration. It's never driven by science. It's never driven by curiosity. Not if it's big and expensive. It's driven by the fact that people don't want to die. So there's a war driver. It's also driven by the fact that people want to get wealthy. So there's a
hold
money
on. We have
driver.
the Large Hadron
the Large Hadron Collider.
The Large Hadron
The Large
Collider.
Do you know?
Oh, no.
No.
Welcome.
Just proves my point.
The Large Hadron Collider. Please remind me of the total construction cost of the Large Hadron Collider.
I don't know, about 10 billion.
About 10 billion. That